This is the story of Zephyr, who after dying in a battle with the god of destruction, as the last human was reincarnated to the past, to save humanity. Zephyr is humanity's last warrior, fighting alone in a world abandoned by the gods. After a brutal, hopeless battle against Tartarus, the god of destruction, the hero finally succumbs to defeat. In one final act of defiance,
お前はもう死んでいる。
he detonates his remaining power, blowing himself up and taking Tartarus's hand with him. For the first time in history, the god who had destroyed hundreds of worlds bleeds. Humiliated, Tartarus smashes Zephyr's lifeless body before crumbling into dust. But instead of dying, Zephyr opens his eyes in a place he never expected, God's realm. The gods who once turned their backs on humanity had been watching him all along, thoroughly entertained by his defiance. To squeeze out even more amusement, they offer him a second chance, to return to the past, and fight once more. They send him 10 years back, to when he was nothing more than a powerless slave. Now awake in his younger body, Zephyr finds himself surrounded by sneering slaves. Nearby, a small boy lies trembling on the ground, after a beating. Seeing the bully's symbols, Zephyr instantly recalls this time, the moment when his 20-year-old self refused to be used as a temple slave. The supervisor shouts for everyone to return to work, and the bullies leave, but not without warning the boy to stay down. Ignoring them, Zephyr grabs a pickaxe, intending to blend in. As he turns, the small boy whispers, "Thanks." Zephyr doesn't recognize him, and walks past, focused on more important matters, the perks promised by the angel Mercedes. He activates his new power, and a surge of energy floods through him. To his amazement, Mercedes wasn't lying. The spell she granted him is far stronger than expected. Within minutes, he's mining at an unbelievable pace, leaving the other slaves stunned. His incredible speed forces them to work harder just to keep up. As he continues, his mind is filled with information about new skills and items, rare, high-level abilities freely given. Before he can process it all, the supervisor storms over, mistaking his brief pause for laziness. When Zephyr doesn't respond, the man raises his whip, but Zephyr catches it effortlessly and hands it back, leaving the supervisor pale and apologetic. The whip hadn't even scratched him, proof of his first perk, an ability that nullifies minor physical damage. By day's end, Zephyr has unlocked 9 perks, each one a step toward regaining his lost power. He mines dozens of sacks single-handedly, earning his team first place. The young boy from earlier looks up in shock. They've never ranked this high before. Zephyr realizes their fates are bound to cross again. The bully team falls silent as the supervisor announces the rankings. The lowest team will have less bread, their share given to the winners. Then he orders everyone to pray to Arya, goddess of light, and the temple's main deity. Every slave bows their head, even Zephyr, who knows Arya is one of the 3 supreme gods, also known as the most powerful moneylender. Each slave here bears a debt mark. If they try to escape, their hearts will stop instantly. For Zephyr, the goal is clear: pay off his debt and gain freedom. Only then can he take revenge on the demon lord and protect the woman he loves. Altair. That night, as the slaves gather in the market, Zephyr notices how expensive everything is. The same small boy, Kyle, nervously offers to buy him a beer to show gratitude. Their team has always been last, but today they placed first because of him. Zephyr declines, not wanting to form attachments. Instead, he asks the bartender for recovery water. The bartender warns him it's too pricey and suggests natural healing. Shocked, Zephyr reminds him that interest rates are brutal, but he accepts anyway, confident he can repay it. He drinks the potion, recovery water that restores endurance and slightly boosts mana. Normally it's weak, but thanks to his rare perk that increases potion effectiveness by 500%, even a small dose greatly strengthens him. Though Zephyr works hard in the mines, he knows true power and profit lie elsewhere, so he begins consuming potions daily to train his body. Once he feels ready, he approaches the supervisor and reports hearing strange noises deeper in the mine, possibly monsters. He suggests calling in the hunting team. Of course, Zephyr knows exactly what he's doing. Dungeons mean money. Monsters, born from warped mana, are dangerous, but valuable. Their mana stones and materials are precious resources, and dungeons once feared as death traps are now treasures of wealth. Hunting teams, composed of enslaved warriors, risk their lives for high rewards. Zephyr, a former adventurer, knows he's being held back on purpose. Someone powerful wants him buried here. As he plans his next move, the shopkeeper reminds him that he's reached his borrowing limit. Zephyr smirks to himself. If gold won't come to him, then maybe it's time he takes it by force. Just then, the priestess appears and offers a grim solution, selling Zephyr's organs to the temple, which purchases fresh ones for research. She hands him the paperwork, explaining that the surgery can be cancelled if the loan is repaid in time. Despite the shock of those around him, Zephyr accepts without hesitation and insists on more recovery water. The shopkeeper reluctantly complies, warning him of the risks, but Zephyr drinks the bottles one after another, satisfied that his body now meets the physical conditions required. As he steadies himself, a man named Gothi, head of the recon team, approaches to confirm if he's the guide they were expecting. Zephyr nods, calmly noting his ability to detect mana, a skill that allows him to sense his surroundings over wide areas, particularly useful for navigating dark dungeons undetected. Gothi appears relieved, remarking that this spares them the need for a night vision potion. As the group prepares to depart, Zephyr is handed a worn set of gear and instructed to follow. One of the men, Dale, comments on his unusual abilities, but Gothi quickly silences the chatter. While the team gathers, Zephyr studies them carefully. Two faces are unfamiliar, yet one he recognizes from his past life. The realization strikes him: two of these men will not return alive. He keeps that knowledge to himself, already planning how to use it to his advantage. The team arrives at the dungeon entrance, where a young temple attendant greets them. He ties a thin magical thread around Zephyr's wrist, connecting it to the others. If anyone falls, the thread will snap, signaling the main base to send reinforcements. Though this is only a scouting mission, the attendant urges them to exercise caution. Inside, the tunnels echo with low guttural growls. Two torch-bearing monsters patrol nearby, unaware of the intruders. Gothi and Dale move swiftly, ambushing and killing them before they can react. Zephyr observes, silently analyzing their formation. The recon team's duty is to gather intelligence and assess monster activity, though in manageable cases, they take matters into their own hands. Gothi inspects the fallen creatures, concluding that they are remnants from a battle in another section of the mine. Dale assumes this marks the end of resistance, but Zephyr knows better. The recon members are skilled, yet overconfidence is their downfall. Gothi, brimming with pride, decides they can clear the rest without calling for reinforcements. Dale questions the decision, glancing toward Zephyr, who carries only supplies and tools. Marco, a broad warrior wielding a mana-charged hammer, steps between them to calm the growing tension, asking if Gothi has a concrete strategy. A confident grin crosses Gothi's face. He instructs Zephyr to take out what he prepared earlier. Inside the boy's pack lies a bundle of bush leaves and berries, known for producing a scent similar to that of a female cobalt in heat, when mixed with monster waste. The bait works flawlessly. Within moments, a creature charges into their trap and is swiftly dispatched. The others cheer at the success, showering Gothi with praise. None of them realize the plan originated entirely from Zephyr. In his previous life, Zephyr had once served under Gothi in the same unit. He remembered how ambition often clouded the man's judgment. Before this very mission, Zephyr had manipulated him by claiming the dungeon was lightly populated, an easy victory ripe for personal glory. He had offered Gothi both the plan and the rare moon bushes, knowing the man would accept if it meant earning recognition. Back in the present, Gothi finishes off the final cobalt, unimpressed by the weak mana stones they recover. Zephyr moves ahead to scout, signaling that the path appears clear. Yet Dale, scanning the area, notices bones scattered across the floor. Their placement feels unnatural, arranged with intent. Before he can warn the others, a massive claw bursts from the darkness, seizing him and smashing him violently against the cavern wall. Marco charges forward, his hammer glowing as he activates his mana shield, attempting to rally the team. Despite his bravado, fear flickers in his eyes as the creature's tail sweeps across the chamber, striking him with tremendous force and sending him crashing into the rock. Outside, the attendant monitoring the magical threads watches in horror as three of them snap at once. Reinforcements are immediately dispatched. Inside, Gothi lies wounded, clutching his bleeding shoulder, while Zephyr stands protectively before him. His iron wall perk glimmers faintly, having absorbed most of the monster's attack, yet even that powerful defense barely withstood the strike. From the shadows, the creature steps forward, its grotesque form illuminated by the faint torchlight. Towering and distorted, its claws clutch the limp bodies of Dale and Marco. Zephyr recognizes it instantly, a predatory species that breeds other monsters, feeding upon them once they mature. Without hesitation, Zephyr takes Gothi's spear and activates his third perk, Silver Key, drawing from his personal storage. He retrieves a strip of cloth and a bundle of dragon weed, wrapping it around his hand in preparation. He signals Gothi to remain still and avoid interfering. Though Gothi struggles against the instinct to act, the monster's fear roar stops him cold. The sound freezes his body entirely, his mind consumed by primal terror. He remembers the words of an old soldier who once described facing such a beast, how entire villages would stand paralyzed, unable to even blink as death descended. The same horror grips him now, yet through the haze, he sees something impossible. Zephyr moves unfazed by the monster's fear ability. Zephyr dashes forward, weaving between its attacks with precision and speed. The dragon weed, amplified by his potion effect perk, nullifies the paralysis completely. He coats his spear in a potent poison, one created by his late friend Fade, an alchemist, who entrusted his life's work to Zephyr before the world's end. The mixture is powerful enough to corrode a monster from the inside out within minutes. Recalling Fade's sacrifice, Zephyr drives the poisoned spear into the creature's chest, and slashes across its arm to quicken the flow. The toxin takes hold swiftly, 3 minutes until it reaches the heart. All that remains is survival. The monster thrashes in fury, its tail lashing out and striking Zephyr, hurling him against the wall. Bones crack, pain floods his senses, yet he rises. The beast charges again, jaws wide to consume him. Zephyr, reacting instantly, hurls the final vial of poison into its gaping mouth, and follows through with a powerful strike across its face. The creature bellows in agony, its movements growing sluggish. The poison works relentlessly through its veins. Zephyr, battered and bloodied, steadies his stance as the monstrous body convulses before him. Only 1 minute remains. Victory, or death, depends on whether he can endure that long. Zephyr knew he lacked the skills and stamina to completely evade the monster. At that moment, only 2 choices remained: wait for the creature to collapse from within, or strike with enough force to bring it down himself. As he prepared to attack, the monster's tail swung with deadly speed, but Zephyr, reacting instantly, seized it midair. He held firm as the colossal force lifted him high above its head. Once in position, he lunged downward, driving his spear deep into the creature's eye. The spear splintered upon impact, its shaft breaking apart, yet Zephyr pressed on. With the broken weapon in one hand and his knife in the other, he delivered a flurry of precise, furious strikes. The monster convulsed violently, its roars echoing through the cavern. Clinging tightly to the embedded blade, Zephyr refused to release his grip. He understood, one final strike was needed. Drawing strength from the mana restored by multiple recovery potions, and amplified by his effectiveness perk, he poured everything into his arm. His fist came crashing down like a storm from the heavens, and the monster fell still. From a distance, Gothi watched in awe and disbelief. He had misjudged the boy. Someone with that kind of raw power would inevitably rise. It was only a matter of time. Yet he also knew the truth. Zephyr, being a minor, had only entered the dungeon through his help. Meanwhile, deep within the jungle, a yellow-haired man lay injured and surrounded by a band of shadowy figures. Trembling, he pleaded for mercy. The man, with a cross-shaped mark on his forehead, gave a silent signal. His massive companion obeyed instantly, crushing the man's skull in a single brutal motion. Moments later, the corpse twitched, and from within, a centipede crawled free. With a swift motion, the marked man cut it cleanly in half, declaring that the insect bore the demon lord's mark, proving their target had been an infiltrator after all. Later, the marked man returned to report to his superior, Matthias, but Matthias remained unmoved. 7 operatives had been lost during the mission, and he questioned whether one confirmed spy justified such a cost. The subordinate argued that with the grand raid only a month away, the temple must be purged of traitors now, or risk disaster. After a long pause, Matthias agreed to discuss it with the hunting division, but warned the man not to make him look like a fool again. At the Department of Human Resources, Gothi submitted a transfer request for Zephyr into the hunting squad. The priestess in charge approved it, but made clear that any failure would be his responsibility. Confident in Zephyr's ability, Gothi accepted the terms without hesitation. Success would mean credit, and possibly a promotion. His mind wandered back to the dungeon. He remembered Zephyr calmly asking him to forget everything that happened in the fight. The boy promised to leave behind the cobalt corpses for reporting, but the true prize, the giant monster's remains, he wanted to keep. As a temple slave, Zephyr wasn't permitted to claim loot or materials, so he intended to sell the body in secret. Gothi had dismissed the plan as impossible. Security outside would prevent smuggling, and follow-up teams would soon sweep the dungeon. But Zephyr revealed his trump card, his inventory perk. With one fluid motion, he stored the massive corpse within his personal storage, erasing it entirely. Gothi stood frozen as the body vanished, leaving no trace behind. Zephyr then offered him a deal.
In exchange for silence, he would clear 3 more dungeons, and Gothi could take full credit. It was a dangerous offer, but also one too tempting to ignore. Even now, Gothi weighed the risks against the rewards. If Zephyr continued to succeed, his own reputation as a squad leader would soar. Meanwhile, Zephyr focused on his next move, selling the monster's remains to pay off his debts. Freedom from the temple was all he wanted, yet as he planned, he recalled the upcoming temple raid, rumored to involve a powerful artifact. That item, he believed, might be the key to breaking his chains once and for all. When registration finally completed, Zephyr became an official member of the hunting squad. As the team departed, his thoughts returned to his previous life, a time when he joined the squad only after the raid list had already been chosen. This time, he would act earlier. At the armory, Gothi guided him through the facility, before stepping away to visit his recovering teammates. Moments later, the air shifted. A group of robed men entered, the same shadowed group from the forest. Gothi's face paled. He bowed immediately, and urged Zephyr to do the same.
As the group passes, everyone bows in silence. However, as they pass by Zephyr, the marked group leader senses something unsettling about him, but continues walking. Once they're gone, Gothi explains that they are official inquisitors, agents no one dares to provoke. He warns Zephyr to show respect to the group ahead of them. These people have the authority to label anyone a heretic without consequence. Their leader Sahaku is especially dangerous. Known as the Mad Hound, he has a reputation for enjoying the act of killing, and Gothi urges Zephyr to be careful around him. But just as he's explaining all this, Sahaku suddenly appears and calls out to them. Gothi nearly panics as Sahaku begins walking toward them. The man points directly at Zephyr, referring to him dismissively as a minor. He throws off his cape, revealing himself fully, and demands to know Zephyr's position. Before the boy can respond, Gothi nervously steps in to introduce him as a teammate, but Sahaku immediately shuts him down, making it clear he's not interested in anything Gothi has to say. The tension rises. Gothi can feel Sahaku's killing intent radiating off him, and starts trembling from fear. Zephyr, however, remains calm and unfazed, a composure that catches Sahaku's attention. It doesn't match the boy's rough, inexperienced appearance. He starts to suspect that Zephyr might be far more capable than he looks. Someone this strong being sent to the mines instead of directly to the hunting squad doesn't make sense, especially since aptitude tests usually assign powerful recruits to elite units. Something feels off. Within seconds, Sahaku signals his men, and they surround Zephyr from all sides. Despite sensing the boy's strength, Sahaku remains confident, believing his team can handle him. He steps forward and demands answers, warning that lies won't be tolerated. But Zephyr sees right through it. He knows Sahaku is only making things easier for him. As the circle tightens, Sahaku accuses Zephyr of being a follower of the Demon Lord. The accusation pulls Zephyr's thoughts back to the past, to how those followers betrayed humanity during the Great War and brought about its downfall. In the present day, most only know them as a dangerous cult opposing the Orthodox Church. While Zephyr is lost in thought, Sahaku reveals that he possesses a special ability, a sense that can detect the presence of Demon Lord followers. And right now, his instincts are screaming that Zephyr is dangerous. With a grim look, he begins the interrogation formally, declaring himself an agent of the Inquisitors. The atmosphere grows heavy, but Zephyr doesn't flinch. Instead, he calmly suggests they move somewhere private to continue their talk. The request catches Sahaku off guard. Then, with quiet confidence, Zephyr adds that there are too many people watching, and it would be awkward once he starts beating the nonsense out of him. Sahaku is furious but keeps his composure. He refuses to believe that someone like Zephyr could possibly defeat him. With a sharp motion, he and his team activate a powerful skill, a large triangular portal that forms around Zephyr, trapping him at the center. It's the Red Field, a battlefield skill that greatly boosts the caster's power and stats. Still, our Chad doesn't panic. He takes a stance, one so unusual, it looks almost alien, and it throws Sahaku off. But the Mad Hound doesn't hesitate. He charges straight at Zephyr, confident in his advantage inside the Red Field. He leaps in, unleashing a flurry of knife strikes, but Zephyr dodges each one effortlessly, slipping just out of reach while countering with sharp precision. Sahaku, surprised and frustrated, slides low and tackles him, but the moment he makes contact, it feels like hitting solid steel. For the first time, Sahaku realizes he's underestimated his opponent. Zephyr responds with a sudden barrage of powerful blows, each strike landing cleanly. Sahaku collapses to the ground, unconscious, or possibly worse. Before Zephyr can catch his breath, a spiked mace comes flying at him. He blocks it just in time, though the impact sends him sliding backward. The attacker is the group's tank, wielding a massive weapon with brute strength. Zephyr throws out a mocking taunt to provoke him, and it works. The bozo hurls his mace with enough power to shatter the ground, sending debris flying. Gothi is frozen in disbelief. He can't comprehend how Zephyr took down Sahaku so easily, with what looks like strange unfamiliar martial arts. Yet even against the tank's relentless attacks, Zephyr continues to dodge every strike with smooth, precise movements. This gives Gothi a flicker of hope. If Zephyr humiliates Sahaku's entire team, maybe there won't be any punishment tied to him by association. After all, he's supposed to be Zephyr's leader. But that hope fades fast when someone nearby mutters that it's already been 5 minutes. The longer the fight lasts, the stronger Sahaku's squad becomes inside the red field. True enough, Zephyr begins to feel it. The tank's attacks grow heavier, faster and harder to avoid. Then out of nowhere Sahaku reappears, his aura flaring like fire, and slashes Zephyr across the back in a surprise counterattack. Blood sprays as Sahaku, alive and furious, launches into a blinding assault, darting around Zephyr like a streak of light, and striking from every direction. For a moment Sahaku seemed to have the upper hand, preparing to deliver a final devastating blow, but just as he got close, Zephyr barely managed to catch him, slamming his head into the ground with crushing force. Before Sahaku could recover, Zephyr drove his knee into him again, overwhelming him with sheer strength. Beaten and bloodied, Sahaku lay stunned, realizing that even his boosted stats and enhanced abilities were useless against Zephyr. Zephyr calmly taunted him, remarking that if he truly wanted to show off his speed, he should have let the tank wear him down first. The comment hit a nerve. Furious, the bald tank tightened his grip on the chains, restraining Zephyr, trying to overpower him. But Zephyr didn't back down, mocking the tank, and implying that he was too scared to fight up close. As he did so, he channeled mana into his arms and activated a basic enhancement spell, Power Boost. With that surge of strength, he yanked the chains with such force that they ripped right out of. The momentum sent the tank crashing into a nearby wall, leaving everyone around stunned in silence. Meanwhile, on the ground, Sahaku started crawling toward him, desperate and confused, asking who he really was. But Zephyr simply smirked and walked away, casually reminding him that interrogation was his job. Unseen by everyone, a red-haired man watched the scene unfold from a nearby window, clearly impressed by Zephyr's strength, and quietly wondering if this boy had been sent by their master. The onlookers couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. Sahaku, the powerful leader, had been defeated by a mere rookie. As Zephyr walked away, the defeated man screamed at him in frustration, unable to accept his loss. Zephyr, on the other hand, felt a sense of relief. The first part of his plan was complete, but now he had to wait for someone specific to hear about it. As he continued walking, however, a strange sensation washed over him. His body started to tremble, and he quickly realized what was happening: mana freeze, a temporary shutdown. The power boost skill he'd used in the fight had drained him completely, leaving him vulnerable. He understood now that his body wasn't strong enough yet, and he would have to improve. Collapsed on the ground, Zephyr looked up, but the sky above him shifted into something otherworldly, and a massive figure materialized. The figure introduced itself as Spirit Shilak, the god of debt's agent, revealing that Uzua, the god of debt, had sent it to collect the debt for the Wall of Iron skill Zephyr had used. Zephyr immediately recognized the name of the skill. He knew that while Wall of Iron granted him great advantages in the fight, it also came with severe side effects when the user's mana ran out. All the damage taken during the spell was inflicted at once. Many who had used it had died because of this brutal drawback. The God of Debt spell was like a double-edged sword, feeding off human despair. As Zephyr struggled, the God of Debt watched him with an almost sadistic pleasure, savoring his suffering. Meanwhile, Shilak started calculating the total damage Zephyr had accumulated, preparing to deliver the cumulative blow. Zephyr, completely drained, could only wait helplessly as the countdown to impact ticked down. Despite his best efforts to move, his body refused to respond. In a last-ditch effort, Zephyr ripped the wraps off his hands, revealing a hidden recovery potion. With the countdown nearing its end, he managed to drink the mana potion just in time. The mana surge raised his mana by a single point, halting the debt collection attack before it could land. In a flash, Shilak vanished, and the threat was gone. Zephyr breathed a sigh of relief, but he knew this was only a temporary escape. He still had much to prepare for. Zephyr survived by a split second, smirking at the sky as if mocking Uzura, the god of debt, for underestimating him. After all, he was a survival expert, someone who had managed to live even after humanity fell in his past life. He knew the secret to beating Wall of Iron was simple: keep your mana from dropping to zero. As long as he had even a sliver of mana, the spell couldn't touch him. He remembered that in his previous life,
Wall of Iron was a purple tier skill worth 500 gold, far more than he could afford right now. Yet, the god for their own amusement, had given him the spell anyway, and to thank them he gave a middle finger salute, only enraging the god even more. Later, Zephyr woke up confused, tied to a bed with the priestess standing calmly beside him. Two bulky men were also present, bringing torture tools. Nervous, he looked around as the priestess explained the situation with a disturbingly calm tone. He was in their workshop because the repayment on the loan he took from the shop had expired just an hour ago. Her expression quickly hardened. She grabbed a large knife and stated that he had taken multiple loans using collateral, skipped all the interest payments, and never planned to repay any of them. She held the knife just inches from his face, demanding answers. Zephyr realized the situation was deadly serious. If he tried to use mana, the debt collector Shiluk would return instantly, so he had no choice but to talk his way out of this. He began pleading, saying he'd repay everything next week. But the priestess remained unmoved. She declared they'd definitely take his salary, but he still had to pay the shop loan with interest, something he clearly couldn't afford. Then she gave the order, and one of the large men grabbed Zephyr's arm. She announced they'd cut off one of his fingers for now to make a point. The torturer raised the knife and swung it toward his hand, but Zephyr panicked and shouted something at the last second. Whatever he said made her order the men to stop. Her expression shifted from anger to disbelief, shocked that Zephyr could possibly know something like that. The men stood in shock as the woman screamed at them in a fit of rage, ordering both to leave immediately. They obeyed without a word. As they exited, she threatened the boy, demanding to know how he knew that name, but he pressed further, referring to her as the monster breaker White Rose. He already knew her secret, that the priestess secretly went by the name White Rose, a broker who dealt in monster corpses and stolen goods tied to the criminal underworld. Zephyr understood he could not rely on low-level items if he wanted to explore the dungeons, deciding to use the priestess. With a mocking grin, he thanked her for bringing him to her, revealing that he had a business proposal. Meanwhile, in another room, Sahaku regained consciousness. Consumed by fury, he couldn't believe that a mere boy had humiliated him so easily. Swearing vengeance, he vowed to kill Zephyr if they ever met again. As he created a commotion, the red-haired man noticed the noise and called out to him. Sahaku froze at the sight of him, suddenly nervous, and greeted him with forced respect. The man smiled calmly, assuring the healers that he would deal with Sahaku personally. As they walked away, he casually mentioned Sahaku's recent fight. Remembering the humiliation, Sahaku tried to apologize, but before he could speak, the red-haired man suddenly slammed a knife into his mouth, holding it in place. Disappointed and seething, the man rebuked Sahaku for failing to carry out Inquisitor Matthias's orders, resulting in public embarrassment and disgrace. Rage overtook him. He slashed Sahaku's face without hesitation, coldly reminding him that despite his talent and the high hopes they once had for him, he was now a liability. Even after 6 months of trying, he had only managed to take down 2 demon lord worshippers. According to the red-haired man, Sahaku's repeated failures had exhausted the patience of his superiors. On top of everything, losing to a mere boy had dragged Inquisitor Matthias's name through the mud.
Hearing this, Sahaku collapsed to the ground, pleading desperately for another chance. The red-haired man, firm and unyielding, ordered him to kill the boy who had defeated him, stating that only then would they even consider his future. The weight of the ultimatum sank in. Sahaku realized that if he couldn't manage to kill Zephyr, he would lose the red uniform, and with it, his authority. Before leaving, the red-haired man dropped a glowing purple orb in front of him, claiming it might help. Sahaku instantly recognized it. The orb bore the unmistakable aura of a demon lord worshipper. Shock washed over him, but the red-haired man remained unmoved, leaving the decision to Sahaku: use it and take the risk, or leave it and lose everything. As the door closed behind him, Sahaku stared at the orb, haunted by the memories of the many slaves he had killed using his authority. If he lost the red uniform, he knew there was no redemption. He would return to slavery, and this time there would be no mercy. Everything he had clawed for would vanish. Years of manipulation, obedience, and survival washed away. Driven by desperation and rage, he grabbed the purple orb and decided to use it. Maniacal laughter filled the room as he clutched the artifact. Meanwhile, the red-haired man smiled, revealing he had gotten exactly what he wanted. He instructed his man to keep a close eye on Sahaku, knowing full well that he had only aided him to use him as a diversion. According to his informants, Sahaku's reckless behavior had already drawn attention. Even the head of the temple knights had lowered their guard. The red-haired man planned to exploit this opening to intercept the item, eliminate the head of the order, and most importantly, pave the way for a demon lord worshipper to seize control of the temple. This red-haired man was known as Ned Strier, an impostor and a secret disciple of the demon lord worshippers. Suspicious of recent events, Ned also ordered his man to investigate Zephyr, having recognized the martial arts technique the boy used, a style known only to their master and his disciples. He suspected Zephyr might have been sent by the master himself to assist them. However, given the secrecy of the matter, Ned decided to test the boy through Sahaku. If the boy failed them, Ned planned to eliminate Zephyr himself. Meanwhile, back with the priestess, Zephyr surprised her by revealing the monster corpse he had brought back from the dungeon. Despite her initial concern, she found herself admiring the specimen. However, Zephyr's offer was steep. The items he demanded were valued at 5,000 gold, equivalent to the price of 3 predator-class corpses like the one he presented. Zephyr confidently assured her that she would have all 3 within 3 weeks. Then pausing, he added that he had one more favor to ask. After his recovery, Zephyr joined his teammates for a casual meeting. During the gathering, the group leader Gothi reintroduced everyone to reaffirm their roles. First was Marco, the tanker, then Dale, the swordsman, and finally, he introduced Zephyr. However, tension hung in the air. Gothi quickly noticed the discomfort among the others, particularly in Zephyr's presence. Inside the small dining chamber, Zephyr quietly observed the others. None of them had touched their food, their expressions weighed down by tension. The silence stretched long enough to make the air heavy. Perceiving the discomfort, he decided to lift the mood. From his satchel, he drew a finely crafted bottle of wine, the label alone radiating luxury. Every head turned. Even Gothi, who rarely reacted to anything, raised an eyebrow. Zephyr explained that it was a gift from White Rose, then began to pour for each of them. The simple gesture shifted the atmosphere entirely. Mutters turned to faint smiles, and for the first time since joining them, he sensed the beginning of trust. He knew it was enough. From that moment, they would be more willing to assist him, even in smuggling monster corpses. After all, camaraderie often grew fastest around shared indulgence. He had known Gothi in his previous life. The man's cautious nature and habit of obeying authority had kept him alive longer than most. But the others, Dale and Marco, hadn't survived this far before. Their presence unsettled Zephyr. He couldn't yet tell if they would prove useful, or if he would eventually need to remove them. Still, he understood people well. Those who desired validation only needed to feel seen, and those who craved power needed to be guided toward it. But one thing he could not allow was open hostility. And in this group, the one holding that resentment was Dale. After a while, Gothi began outlining their next assignment. His tone carried quiet authority as he emphasized the importance of success. Completing it could grant them a level promotion, a step closer to freedom. He reminded the group that unity was the only way forward. Yet, even as he spoke, Dale's irritation grew. He muttered complaints about Gothi making decisions without their input. His skepticism directed straight at Zephyr. He even questioned whether the story of Zephyr defeating the Predator was truth or mere illusion. Tension flared, but Marco, the broad-shouldered tank, stepped in between them. He reminded both sides that the reward would be split evenly, and an argument would only waste energy. Reluctantly, they dropped the subject. Still, Dale's distrust lingered. He convinced himself that the boy would bring trouble, and that the dungeon would reveal whatever secrets Zephyr was hiding. The following morning, the team departed for Edorin, a mountain town carved from solid stone. The sight alone filled them with awe. Once a sanctuary for temple workers and injured adventurers, the place now resembled a forsaken monster nest. As they ventured deeper, thick webs blanketed every tunnel wall. Zephyr, maintaining his calm, activated his mana perception, a skill allowing him to sense infused mana from living creatures and enchanted objects. Through it, he guided the group safely, navigating through the sticky maze. When they finally emerged from the first section, he revealed what he had sensed inside, a steel spider. His expression stayed composed as he began explaining the strategy. They would infiltrate the nest, use paralyzing potions on the spiderlings, and wait for the mother to return. The sight of her slaughtered offspring would drive her into a frenzy, exposing her weak points. The plan was methodical, too much so for a boy his age. Dale, ever skeptical, voiced his concern. Even with 4 people, defeating a steel spider was nearly impossible. Its shell was harder than steel, immune to most blades, and its offspring multiplied fast. He suggested asking the temple for assistance. Zephyr merely told him to rest. He could clear the nest alone. The quiet confidence in his voice only deepened Dale's doubts. Moments later, the group began their descent. Dale, distracted by his thoughts, accidentally brushed his hand against a web strand. In an instant, it clung to him, and a chorus of screeches echoed from the darkness. Dozens of spiderlings crawled toward him. Zephyr reacted immediately. He pulled Dale away, positioning himself between him and the swarm. The spiderlings lunged, biting into Zephyr's arm, but their fangs failed to pierce his skin. Without flinching, he slammed them into the ground, his expression calm and focused. Ordering the others into formation, he reminded them to wrap their weapons in their capes, a precaution against the sticky webs. The tactic worked. Even as strands clung to the fabric, their weapons remained free to swing. Dale and Gothi coordinated attacks, herding the swarm together. Once the spiderlings gathered, Zephyr unleashed a single devastating strike, obliterating them all at once. When the dust settled, the group stood in silence. Dale, wounded and humiliated, was startled when Zephyr offered him a healing potion without hesitation. Watching him, Dale realized the boy had likely anticipated everything, even the moment he would get caught. His mana perception made him see what others couldn't. Embarrassed, Dale quietly admitted fault. Zephyr, however, dismissed it and told him to stay alert. Yet within his mind, Zephyr assessed him differently. Despite his suspicion, Dale possessed strong focus and quick adaptability, rare qualities among low-rank adventurers. He knew once they cleared the dungeon, that suspicion would fade. Deeper inside, they executed the paralyzing plan perfectly. The spiderlings froze in place, and when the parent emerged, their strikes landed precisely where Zephyr predicted, the softer underbelly. Dale, testing the advice mid-fight, found it true, and was left speechless by how accurate the boy's insight was. They cheered after downing one spider, until they saw Zephyr, already standing atop a hill of corpses. Calm and unbothered, he suggested taking a brief rest. Marco, still gasping for air, couldn't help but wonder who could have possibly trained someone like him. For a fleeting moment, Zephyr's mind drifted back, to a dim cave, and a man cloaked in shadows who once pushed him beyond the brink. His expression darkened, but he quickly dismissed the thought. There was still one battle left. He plucked several razor-sharp spider legs and walked toward the nest's heart, the queen's chamber. Gothi, uneasy by nature, preferred retreat, while Marco insisted they stay and help. Dale, driven by pride, agreed with Marco, believing numbers would ensure victory. Surprisingly, Zephyr didn't stop them. He simply assigned new roles and continued ahead. The deeper he went, the denser the air became. At the center, surrounded by shimmering web layers, the queen spider waited, massive and vile, her guardians stationed like statues around her. Zephyr took a step forward. None moved. He had already studied their behavior. Each only reacted when intruders crossed into its territory. With a calculated movement, he hurled several bags of flour toward the webs. The bags burst, filling the air with white dust. Visibility dropped instantly, blinding the spiders. The first strike would be his. Then the chaos. Zephyr raised his crossbow and fired a bolt directly at the queen. The projectile struck with a spark, not powerful enough to wound her, but more than enough to ignite the volatile cloud around her. In an instant, the airborne flour particles combusted violently, triggering a massive dust explosion that rocked the entire chamber. The blast tore through the tunnels with deafening force. Debris and web fragments rained from above as Zephyr sprinted through the chaos. He knew the explosion alone wouldn't be enough to kill them, not creatures born within the labyrinth's depths. Behind him, two guardian spiders emerged from the smoke, their screeches piercing through the ringing echoes. Without breaking stride, Zephyr loosed a pair of poison-tipped arrows behind him. One spider fell instantly, its legs spasming as venom overtook its body. But the second guardian surged forward, closing the distance as Zephyr turned the corner. Then it stopped, its path blocked by a thick wall of webbing. Earlier, Zephyr had instructed his team to use spider web sacks to build traps along the escape routes. When Gothi questioned whether such webs could truly restrain spiders, the boy explained that without their special glandular liquid, even spiders became ensnared in their own silk. Each member had been handed a sack, ordered to seal key choke points. Now, that preparation paid off. The explosion had evaporated the creature's protective secretion, and it became trapped, writhing helplessly. Zephyr drew a pair of sharpened spider claws and cleaved through the immobilized guardian in one swift motion. Only one guardian remained, but before he could react, the queen spider herself lunged out from the depths with a shriek that shook the cavern. Her enormous frame crashed through the remaining walls, venom dripping from her mandibles as she barreled toward him.
Zephyr ran for the exit. Outside, his team stood waiting in formation, ready as instructed. Just as he reached the threshold, the queen spewed a jet of venom, a corrosive stream capable of melting flesh in seconds. Remembering its lethality from his past life, Zephyr dove through the entrance, narrowly avoiding the acid as it scorched the rock behind him. The queen didn't stop. She erupted from the cavern, venom splattering across the terrain. Outside, the others froze. Zephyr, gripping the spider claws, rushed forward to meet her. He slashed across her back, landing between her and the others to take her focus. His role was clear: draw her attention, endure the attacks, and create openings. The queen shrieked, the air trembling from her fury. Yet Zephyr held his ground, unflinching. The rest hesitated, all except Gothi, who trembled uncontrollably at the sight of the towering monster. Dale and Marco, however, steeled themselves. Memories of mockery from higher-ranked hunters burned in their minds. The insults, the belittlement, the laughter. They were treated as disposable informants, not warriors. But this time was different. They had come this far under Zephyr's lead. Every command, every strategy, had worked flawlessly. Dale clenched his weapon tighter. Enough humiliation. This time, he would stand his ground. Marco shared that conviction. Even Gothi, though shaken, found himself pulled along by their resolve. Against his better judgment, he stepped forward to fight. Together, they targeted the damaged plates along the spider's armor, coordinating their strikes precisely as Zephyr had instructed. Aim for the middle of the legs, where the nerves run. Coat weapons in tranquilizer to slow her movements. Following those instructions, Dale struck. The effect was immediate, but as he landed the blow, the queen reared back, preparing to crush him.
Don't do it to me! I beg you!
Before the strike could land, Zephyr descended from above, intercepting her attack mid-motion. His claws sliced through her limbs, forcing her to recoil. Every move radiated calm precision. He maneuvered between the spider's frenzied blows as if he'd already seen them before, and in truth, he had. Watching him, Dale finally understood. The boy wasn't simply fighting, he was controlling the battlefield. He remembered Zephyr's earlier words: the queen would be blinded by rage after her eggs were burned, focusing only on the largest threat. And now, that prediction proved true. From the rear, Dale noticed something else. The queen's hind legs barely moved. She relied solely on her front half, exactly as Zephyr had explained. Her anatomy limited her, and he had exploited that weakness perfectly. The realization hit hard. Zephyr had fought monsters like this before. He was no novice. With renewed confidence, the group pressed the assault. The tranquilizers began to take effect. Gothi drove his spear deep into one of her legs, but it became stuck. The queen screeched and lifted him into the air, throwing him violently to the ground. Enraged, she began channeling venom into her glands. But before she could release it, Zephyr darted forward, grabbed the gland
Yoink!
through the wound in her abdomen, and ripped it free. He fastened his belt around it tightly, sealing the poison inside. Without hesitation, he vaulted onto her back, and drove his heel down on her skull. The impact cracked the creature's head, echoing through the chamber. The queen shuddered, collapsing under her own weight. The battlefield fell silent. Then, cheers erupted.
Dale, trembling and breathless, could hardly believe it. They had actually slain the queen, but as he turned to look at Zephyr, he realized something. The boy had guided them to this victory. He had made sure they landed the finishing blow. He had led, protected, and empowered them. For the first time, Dale felt that maybe, if he followed this boy, he could become someone stronger. Meanwhile, Zephyr silently evaluated which monster corpses to bring back for Arya at the White Rose. His thoughts were cut short when Dale called to him, proudly gesturing to a resting spot he'd prepared, offering to handle the corpses and the cleanup. Dale insisted that Zephyr rest. Accepting, Zephyr watched as they worked. Despite their flaws, they weren't bad, not at all. But he knew deep down, they still wouldn't be enough. Against the kind of enemies from his past life, he needed more power, better equipment, and a long-term plan. Later he returned to Arya, presenting the Predator's corpse. Her eyes widened in admiration, clearly impressed. She rewarded him with expanded inventory space. But Zephyr's focus remained elsewhere. He observed the temple from the balcony, the bustling priests, the merchants in robes, the gold coins changing hands. He knew the truth. Temples were no longer sanctuaries of faith. They were businesses, fortresses of influence, that traded protection for devotion. Safety had a price, and someday, even that would become impossible to buy. Later in a private meeting, Arya informed him of the results. The sale had gone well, he'd cleared 48% of his total debt. The temple would take another 20% as their share. Then she mentioned she'd arranged lab cleaning duty for him, granting him night access to the lab's equipment in exchange for maintenance. Zephyr accepted the offer without hesitation, far better than sneaking in as before. But as they spoke, a shadow approached from the hall. A voice called out to Arya, calm yet carrying authority. Turning around, Zephyr's eyes widened. It was Ned Streer, the red-haired inquisitor. Arya greeted him lightly, teasing that he must be there for a loan, or perhaps another failed courtship attempt. But she knew better. Ned wasn't here for pleasantries. He was here for the boy. Zephyr had humiliated Sahaku, and Ned was his superior. Trying to diffuse the tension, Arya politely moved to escort Ned away, but he ignored her, his gaze fixed on Zephyr as a faint smile curved across his lips. He called the boy's name, then with an unsettling calm, invited them both for tea. The room grew cold. With that same eerie smile, Ned Streer asked if Zephyr happened to know Sahaku, and though the air thickened with hostility, Zephyr's expression didn't waver. He simply denied knowing anyone by that name. As they stared each other down, the atmosphere thickened. A tremendous amount of mana burst from both of them, saturating the air with pressure. The priestess started trembling as the mana was so dense it pierced her skin. In that moment she realized that Zephyr might be as strong as a temple slave, or possibly even stronger. Ned, standing just feet away from Zephyr, felt it too. Channeling mana into his fingers, he prepared to fight, eager to see what the boy was truly capable of. Just as they were about to clash, the priestess activated the slave mark spell, forcing both of them to stop. The spell, which only worked on slaves marked by the temple, hit both of them hard.
Oh man, you're just ruining it.
They dropped to their knees instantly. The priestess walked over and slapped Zephyr without hesitation. Then, grabbing him by the collar, she dragged him away while scolding him for nearly getting himself killed. While walking away, she turned toward Ned and coldly revealed that the boy was hers to toy with, warning that if he ever tried to mess with him again, she would kill him. Once they were in a secluded area, she finally explained the truth, that Ned was a dangerously deceptive man, a demon in disguise. According to her, no one had ever defeated him in battle. Everyone who tried ended up dead. However, Zephyr found her explanation uninteresting, which frustrated her to the point that she yelled at him, reminding him that he was her main source of income. But as she noticed the bruise forming on his face from her earlier slap, her tone softened. She reached out to touch it, feeling a bit guilty. Zephyr, however, pushed her hand away, claiming that what had happened wasn't a fight, just a greeting. Deep down though, he knew Ned had been fully prepared, and had deliberately come out to provoke a battle. Without saying much else, Zephyr turned and left for the lab, quietly asking the priestess for a favor before leaving. Meanwhile, back at the temple grounds, Ned brushed the dust off his clothes, still processing the intensity of the slave mark spell. From the beginning, Ned hadn't been a temple slave. It was his master's command that had placed him there, but he had always felt disgust toward the temple and its people, yet he had followed orders, even when they made his skin crawl. However, Ned had been shocked when his master revealed that 2 demon lord worshippers, who had infiltrated the temple disguised as priests, had been executed. The rest were in hiding due to heightened surveillance. Their only remaining path into the temple was through the slave mark. The master had explained that the priests of light didn't monitor marked slaves closely, believing them easy to control. So he had ordered Ned to continue posing as a temple slave, infiltrate the temple of light, and steal the reward from the raid dungeon. Ned had agreed without hesitation. Now in the present, Ned knew they had already found a method to neutralize the slave mark, and he was confident the priests of light didn't know about it. However, they had to wait until the temple weakened, and the priests fell to their knees. Far away in a crumbling fortress, a group of outlaws worked on repairing their fences. One of them called the others for food, and slowly the workers gathered around a battered wooden table, sharing a meager meal while talking about their poverty and how they couldn't afford temple protection, hence the need to maintain their own defenses. As they ate, the tower guard spotted someone approaching from the temple, Sahaku. Upon entering the fortress, the first thing he asked was the number of people living there. A worker nervously answered, 50. That number brought a manic smile to Sahaku's face. Without warning, he raised a strange flute-like instrument and played a haunting note. In response, a monstrous creature burst from the ground, impaling the workers without mercy. This was Sahaku's new power, unleashed and terrifying. With it he was certain Zephyr would never humiliate him again. As Sahaku laughed maniacally, driven by his twisted ambition, the creature rampaged through the fortress, mercilessly devouring the remaining workers one by one. Meanwhile, in the Temple of Light, it was now nighttime, and Zephyr was busy in the laboratory, mixing and boiling ingredients laced with the queen spider's poison. He aimed to create a deadly concoction of Fade, something he called the King of Poisons. For this he had taken over the priestess's room, believing that Ned's little minion might appear and sabotage his work. Though the priestess had initially objected, he had managed to convince her to lend him the space. As she looked through his blueprint, confusion clouded her expression, as she couldn't make sense of what he was trying to create. Meanwhile, Zephyr drew precise lines across a log of arcanwood, and then smashed it with his mana-infused fist. The large pieces broke away, leaving behind several small uniform sticks. This sight both amazed and confused the priestess, so Zephyr explained that these were needles, similar to those used in Eastern medicine. His plan was to dip their ends into poison, and let them sit for 10 minutes. Once ready, according to him, these needles could kill any creature with minimal effort. However, no one had ever imagined they would come to rely on poisons after the Demon Lord's attack, especially since the gods had abandoned them. With that thought, Zephyr began inserting the poison needles into his own body. Almost immediately, the poison started spreading through his veins, making him tremble in pain. The priestess, alarmed, moved toward him, but he raised a hand to stop her. She remembered what he had told her earlier, not to panic no matter what happened, and to simply carry out a task for him when he signaled. Although she remained unsure of what he truly intended, Zephyr was clear that he sought to upgrade himself. He knew that under the right conditions, two poisons could neutralize each other's effects, transforming into a medicine, or even a potion that boosted one's stats. The challenge, however, lay in the fact that he was working with incredibly painful, unstable, and unpredictable toxins. The pain pushed Zephyr's body to its absolute limit, but he knew this was the only way forward. He channeled his mana, directing the flow to control internal injuries, and potentially boost his levels. With this he was testing whether the technique would heal him, or if it would cause his body to shatter like a brittle mirror. Still, Zephyr knew this pain was nothing compared to what the Demon Lord once did to him. As he concentrated, the flow of mana stabilized. His veins began to lose their darkened hue, returning to their normal color. The transformation stunned the priestess, but she recalled what Zephyr had told her earlier, that she must drive the final poison needle into his head when he gave the signal. The moment arrived, and though nervous, she obeyed his command, plunging the needle in with trembling hands. Several hours later, deep in the woods surrounding the Temple of Light, a beam from the slave mark erupted into the sky, lighting it up with a flash. On the ground, chaos reigned as hunters fled for their lives. Chased by a stampede of monstrous ostriches, they shouted in frustration, cursing the recon team for misreporting the number of nests. Fortunately for them, they had fired a flare earlier, calling for reinforcements, but the stampede moved faster than anyone anticipated. As the hunters argued, the creatures caught up and tore through the group one by one. The leader was the last one left standing, knowing the temple was still at least 20 minutes away, and things looked grim. He collapsed and hauled to the ground, watching as one of the massive ostriches loomed over him with its razor beak, ready to strike. But just as the monster lunged, a powerful dagger sliced through the air, piercing the creature's neck. The beast crashed lifeless to the ground. Seeing this, the leader was stunned, but his shock deepened when Zephyr crashed to the ground with a powerful impact. As soon as he landed, all the monstrous ostriches charged at him, but with his newly enhanced strength, he easily overpowered them, tearing through the horde like they were nothing more than a bucket of KFC. He targeted their necks with brutal precision, and with a single powerful mana burst, he launched multiple projectiles that struck every creature squarely in the throat, killing them instantly. The leader stood frozen, unable to comprehend how a single person, temple reinforcement or not, could do this alone. Before he could say anything, Zephyr demanded the location of the monster nest. Still in disbelief, the leader pointed it out. Without another word, Zephyr vanished in a single leap, leaving behind an overwhelming aura and a heavy sense of awe and inferiority weighing down on the hunter captain. However, the leader immediately regretted not giving Zephyr a critical piece of information, that the nest was extremely dangerous. As he silently blamed himself for the oversight, a sudden blast echoed through the forest, followed by a chain of explosive crashes and deep cracks in the earth. To his utter disbelief, Zephyr emerged from the shadows moments later, dragging the severed head of the boss monster behind him. Despite the intense battle he had clearly just fought, he looked calm, almost relaxed. The poison needles coursing through his system seemed to have doubled his strength and dulled the pain. But Zephyr knew his next challenge was gear. He needed new equipment,
though finding a place to forge or acquire it would come first. As he considered his next move, he fired the green flare, signaling that the emergency had been handled. Meanwhile, far away in the dungeon's dark depths, Sahaku continued his brutal slaughter, waiting for the moment he and Zephyr would meet again. A few days later, Mattias, the senior inquisitor, and Lucius, the commander of the Temple Knights, discussed the recent news that a slave had reportedly defeated a horde of monstrous ostriches, including their towering 100-foot-tall leader. They suspected the act might be a deliberate attempt to showcase his abilities in hopes of being included in the upcoming raid. Upon hearing this, Mattias suggested interrogating the slave, but Lucius refused for now. The Inquisitor pushed back, concerned that the slave could be a demon lord worshipper and might interfere with the mission. However, Lucius surprised him by proposing a different strategy, bringing such individuals along on the raid and dealing with them there, rather than risking them causing problems elsewhere. Although they had been friends for over 20 years, Mattias disagreed with the idea, but the commander had a reason for involving him further. He led Mattias into the tower basement. When he opened a large sealed door, Mattias was taken aback when he saw Michael's legendary heavenly lance and shield. He couldn't believe his eyes. He had only ever read about relics like this in books. The commander assured Mattias that with these weapons, they finally had a real chance at clearing the dungeon after 10 long years. With a confident expression, he added that this time, he would be nearly unstoppable during the raid. The next morning at the slave rooms, Zephyr's hunting teammates wrapped up a grueling training session. They were a bit surprised by the training area being so crowded lately. Marco explained that these were slaves, hoping to claim a spot in the raid. Rumor had it that 2 or 3 positions might still be open. As they talked, the priestess suddenly walked out of their room and passed by them. The group immediately bowed out of respect. After she walked past, a few of them quietly wondered what she had been doing in their quarters. Soon the group's worst suspicion was confirmed, when they spotted Zephyr in their room wearing a golden ring.
They stared in disbelief, unsure how he had managed to get such an item from the priestess. Zephyr, however, brushed it off casually. Internally, he knew the ring was no ordinary accessory. It was the Ring of Purification, an item that boosted mana flow and enhanced magical defense. The priestess had given it to him after his upgrade session, claiming she had more items like it that could help improve his stats. This gesture made Zephyr suspect that she was motivated by money. Meanwhile, the priestess walked toward her room, lost in thought. She was thinking about Fani, the now defunct guild of assassins known for using poison to enhance their stats and eliminate targets. Zephyr's growing skill in hunting and his poison-based upgrades made her wonder if he might be a former member. She recalled that the guild had fallen apart years ago due to internal conflict, but rumors persisted that wealthy individuals were still seeking their poisons or surviving members. She considered the possibility of profiting by keeping Zephyr close. If she equipped him properly, he could bring in significant value. But first she needed to find the right gear for him. Zephyr, sensing her thoughts, was surprised she had come to the conclusion that he might be part of an assassin group. Still, he saw the upside. If she spread that rumor, his intended target might eventually come looking for him. Coming out to the hunting team, Gothi was sweating, commenting on Zephyr managing to get a ring from that mommy. The others agreed as well. But just as Zephyr prepared to talk to them about the dungeon, someone suddenly slammed at the door. Dale checked and found a note pinned to it with a knife. It was an official order to leave immediately and report back on the situation. The group was confused about who would deliver an official document in such a strange way, especially one stamped by the hunting team. Zephyr also took a look and instantly recognized the handwriting. It was Ned's. Realizing this, he became excited, seeing it as a personal challenge. Without wasting time, Zephyr headed out and began flashing through the woods, moving quickly while contemplating the upcoming raid. This raid wasn't a typical mission. It would take place in the Tomb of the Fallen Princess, a massive ruin left behind by an ancient kingdom. It was known to be extremely difficult to conquer, with no one having reached the boss room in over 10 years of attempts. To even qualify for the raid, a person had to either be a slave assigned to a priest, or a top-ranking member of a hunting team. Zephyr knew his current team wouldn't make it to the top ranks in time, so he planned to rely on Ned. As a slave directly under Matthias, Ned had the influence to get someone included. Zephyr hoped to earn a recommendation from him. He was confident Ned wanted to test him anyway, possibly even suspecting him to be an ally sent by the Demon Lord. As these thoughts ran through his mind, Zephyr moved quickly through the mountain paths until he crashed through a watchtower. As the dust settled, a familiar voice called out to him, and he instantly recognized it as Sahaku. He paused and told Sahaku to go home, clearly puzzled about why he was even there. The ugly Sahaku gave an evil grin, claiming he had been feeling pretty horny for him these past couple of days. As Zephyr stood there confused, Sahaku suddenly pulled out a knife, attempting to show off some new power. But before he even finished speaking, Zephyr flashed past him and dropped him to the ground with a single strike. He frowned, frustrated that Ned seemed to be hiding something, especially if he was sending someone like Sahaku instead of coming himself. Thinking he might be nearby, Zephyr called out. But instead of any answer, Sahaku began to move again. He rose from the ground in an unnatural way, laughing maniacally. A slimy creature started emerging from beneath his cape. Without hesitation, Sahaku pulled out a flute and started playing it, causing the slime to lift him into the air and morph into a large monster-like abomination. Sahaku, completely unhinged, shouted wildly, cursing Zephyr and vowing to make his death slow and painful. As the creature finished forming, Sahaku wasted no time and launched an attack. Caught off guard, Zephyr hesitated, and the strike sent him crashing into the side of a mountain. However, before Sahaku could react further, an energy beam melted away the monster's appendages, and Zephyr reappeared unharmed and ready. Zephyr quickly recognized the creature as a biological weapon created by Demon Lord worshippers. It started off as an egg, then hatched when activated by a hypnotic instrument like the ocarina Sahaku used. The ocarina also protected the user from the monster's corruption aura. The monster itself had no mind, an unstable appetite, and grew stronger with every human it devoured, especially those with mana. This made physical attacks nearly useless. As Zephyr analyzed the situation, the creature grabbed and wrapped him with its appendages. This reminded him of the corruption aura, which activated the moment this monster touched someone. Once infected, the victim's mind slowly deteriorated, until they became violent and unstable, often turning against even their own allies. This creature was one of the Demon Lord's creations designed specifically to wipe out humans. As Zephyr became entangled in the monster's grip, Sahaku started laughing uncontrollably, confidently claiming that Zephyr's mind was now fully corrupted. But Zephyr had the mommy ring with him, a relic that carried a curse removal ability. It activated, completely dissipating the monster around him. Without giving Sahaku a chance to react, Zephyr grabbed him by the throat. As he held him there, he reflected on back when he still cared deeply about saving people, even when the world around him felt hopeless. He often wondered if things might have turned out differently, had he grown up among humans who actually stood together and knew how to fight. Maybe then the people close to him would still be alive. As these thoughts ran through his mind, Sahaku began to sweat, unnerved by Zephyr's cold demeanor. Zephyr had made peace with the fact that he was willing to give people chances, but not to someone like Sahaku, who had fed hundreds of innocent people to this monster and still wanted more. With anger building up, Zephyr channeled all his mana into his fist and slammed it into Sahaku's gut, following up with a brutal punch to the face that shattered it completely. Then, without pausing, Zephyr began preparing the finishing move, East Dragon's Roar, a powerful technique that channeled lightning through his strike. Gathering mana into his palm, he released the attack with full force, hitting Sahaku with a barrage of lightning-charged strikes.